Today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. About 7 or 8 years ago, I was having some relationship issues and I decided it would be beneficial for myself and everybody involved if I went to therapy. I went to therapy specifically to work on my anger issues, my communication skills. I was really good at bottling things up and letting things build up until I exploded. Going to therapy helped me get through a lot of those issues. I'm still working on a lot of these issues, but I'm much better at being able to be open and honest in the moment versus letting things build up and letting things erupt. One of the benefits of me going to therapy in the beginning was when I started doing my vlogs. It was very therapeutic for me to look directly into the camera and be able to talk and say what was going on with me and going on, work situation and what I was doing with my life. It was very therapeutic at the time for me to do those vlogs. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but going to therapy was a big help for me. And while therapy has been incredibly helpful for me, I know that not everybody has the time or the resources to commit to in-person therapy. That's where BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's video, can help. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their website, answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will connect you with a therapist with years of experience working with people who have the same struggles as you. You can do it all from your phone or your computer via phone call, video, chat, or messaging, however you feel most comfortable. It's the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist that can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/Jimmy DiResta or choose Jimmy DiResta during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Thank you, BetterHelp. If you're having issues, seek a therapist. It can only help. I know from experience. Okay, here I am in the barn, and the barn needs doors. You'll see that there's plywood on the barn, but there are certain spots. Right here, for instance, the door needs to get cut out. That door has been cut out. Both big end barn doors are not cut out completely. When we plywooded it, we left some of it down, so I've got to also cut out those angle braces because I want the doors to be square. In each one of the horse stalls, the doors need to be cut out. When I ask myself, what type of a door do I want? I don't trust my woodworking skills to make a 100-year door. I don't believe that I'm that skilled. I don't have practice in that type of joinery, but I am good at welding. And the doors I made on that barn haven't failed me yet. It's been 6 or 7 years, and they're holding up very good. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna make steel frames in 3x3 by 1/4 inch angle iron, weld them all up, use bullet hinges, some custom-made latches, and I'm going to make all the doors for this barn starting now. I cut through all the plywood now. All the doors are exposed. The big doors are at each end are as open as they're going to be, and the horse stalls. And now the steel has been delivered. I bought 20-foot long, 3x3 angle iron, 1/4 inch thick. I bought 25 of them. And by the end of the video, you'll notice I didn't do the big giant door on one side. I did only one of the 2 big giant doors because I ran out of material. I'll get some next week and finish up those doors. And because they're so heavy, these things are about 100 pounds each, and I'm an old man, and they're so heavy I decided to just cut everything I could right here in the yard where everything got dumped instead of dragging it and moving it several times. It's easier to move it in pieces, and those pieces should be cut to size, and that's what I'm doing. I'm cutting every piece. First order of business for me is to frame each one of the doors with the steel, because the door that gets made is going to be welded to those steel frames with a bullet hinge. And you can see the logistics of the backyard. And now that I have everything I need for most of the doors, I drill holes in them, and that's where I put them in place. And I'm making sure everything's level because it's really important. I don't want to have to make a custom odd trapezoidal shaped door. I found what was interesting about being able to put these steel jambs on is that everything was as level as I possibly could get it. But later on, when I put the doors in, there was one or two that I needed to adjust to make sure that the gap was correct. And because I made sure all these were level, I could make sure on the welding table that the doors were as square as I could possibly make them and not worry about it. Any discrepancy is made up in the movable door jamb. But to give me a starting point, I put the jamb up. And the way I was able to make the measurement was I cut a piece of 1/2 inch material, just a piece of scrap, and I stuck that against the door jamb and I measured what was left over. And that gave me the final measurement for the width of my door. Because once the door was put back in place, now it's a 1/2 inch too skinny, which I was able to gap it around, gave me a 1/4 inch gap everywhere. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So every time I took a measurement, top, bottom, left, right, I stuck a little 1/2 inch block at the end of the ruler so that 1/2 inch was already made up. This way I don't have to try and do math. I just stick the ruler in, read the number, and know that's the width of my door. Now here me and Mike are putting in the jambs for the big giant doors. We did one for each side. And that's all, again, just screwed in place. By the end of the project, I will weld each one of those corners. Now I'm using my KBC cold saw. I got it from KBC. It's I don't know what the brand is, but it's from KBC. They import it. And I'm making all my angles. This is what I do. I'll take all the material I need and cut one angle, and then take it over to the welding table. And in this case, I have my strong hand table. I take it over. Everything is set. All my guides are set. That's the width of the jamb that I make. That's the width of the door needs to be no matter what. So I'm always marking it in between the pieces. I never hook a ruler. This way I know every door I make is going to fit right inside with that 1/2 inch discrepancy already taken out. And I bring it over to the cold saw, and every cut takes about 2 to 3 minutes. A cold saw doesn't cut very fast, but it cuts very accurately. And that's what I want. I want accuracy right now. Out in the field, when I was cutting with the angle grinder, I didn't mind because I knew those were going to get put up in the door, and plus also everything was still so heavy. Now these are the doors. These have to look good. There's less opportunity for me to hide any mistakes. And as you see, I have all my fixtures on the fixture table, the exact door size that I need. And as long as I stay inside of those fixtures, I'm going to be good. Now I take my time, I weld around a little bit, I tack and weld as I go. And these doors are going to be Dutch doors. I'm going to have 5 Dutch doors, 1 regular small door, and 2 big giant doors at each end. And so this is me setting up for the Dutch door. I put the framework in, but I don't cut the door in half till the very end. I'm using a piece of 1/8 inch. That's going to be my spacer between the top and bottom there. I get all the welds I can get while the door is face down on the table. And I'm clamping everything down so in case any deflection happens. And I flip it over, and I've already accommodated for the welds that are going to go on this side. I've made sure that there's a chamfer so that the weld will live and sit inside of that chamfer. And then also when I grind it flat, it doesn't grind completely away. And I'm using, even though I'm not endorsing them, I think they work great, but I'm not working as an endorsee for 3M, but I'm using Cubetron discs, which are really the best thing on the market. Now this is an interesting way. How do I get these 100 plus doors down to the shop, which is about 220 feet away, 200 feet away? I'm walking them. This is like how they did the Easter Island heads. And that's how I move some heavy machinery sometimes. I just walk it. And I'm making sure everything fits into place. This is the first time I'm making sure everything fits, and I'm excited. And I have lots of wedges. I'm using the wedges to hold everything centered in place. I have wedges on the bottom, so I'll cut some thick sticks just to sit them on until I know that I have an air gap at the door jamb on the bottom. And then I'm using shims, the long, thin, tapered shims, and I could bang them in. And this way the door is banged, hammered into place. This one was a real bear. It kept tumbling and falling in and out, and I finally got it. And now the next day I come back with the welder and I start welding on the bullet hinges. I'm happy. The placement is nice. I had to adjust a couple of those jambs, but not many, really just 2 of them. And then now I could weld them now that the air gap is is consistent everywhere. And I'm using my MP210. This is the one I use when I got to drag it around, and it works just as good as the MP215. Now this is a bullet hinge. I got these on Amazon. They sell them on McMaster, but I got them on Amazon. You got to make sure that's the bottom part. So every time you weld, you got to make sure that has to be welded onto the frame, and then the dynamic part goes on the door. And all these door jambs could be lifted up. All these doors could be lifted up and off the jamb ultimately. And because I'm going to do the Dutch door, I put 2 above the cut and 2 below the cut. And by the end of the video, I will split the doors in half. And welding them on, it's important to make them straight. A couple of them weren't straight, and in the over closing and opening the doors while I was working on them, they broke off because they weren't in line. And I'm very happy they work really well. And a lot of people worry about grease and oil. I think they're going to be fine. I could always just pick the door up and off and put oil and grease up inside of it. Now this is the first couple I've done. I'm really excited that they're working well. And so I have these 4 doors on this side. I've already done 2 doors on the other side I haven't shown, because I just didn't want this video to get too redundant. It's a lot of the same. Now those door frames are going to get filled with 2-inch thick rough cut hemlock. And that's what I just got from the sawmill. And I got a custom cut each piece to fit inside. I'm trying to keep the piece top and bottom for all the Dutch doors the same. And everything gets overlapped by 1 inch. I have the saw set up as a rabbet, so I could come up 1 inch and come over 1 inch, and I end up with the rabbet. The end boards only get a rabbet on one side, and the boards in the middle get a rabbet on both sides. And I did this a couple times before I came up with a really good system, but that's like anything you do. You got to just keep fumbling around with it. You go to school on the first one, as I often say. And I don't have really an outfeed table in the shop, so I set up this makeshift outfeed table. It's just a piece of walnut I had that was nice and straight and thick. And you could see how the door infill is starting to build up. And you see I needed to make a couple of little small pieces to take up. Those are 10 inches wide. All the doors are about 45 to 42 inches wide. And that's me just cutting the parts in half. And the only reason I have 3 at a time on the horses is because that's what it could take. Plus everything was so heavy. And these I just screwed together because I was alone. It was easier. They kept falling out. And now I'm gluing in, I'm welding in a piece of 1/8 inch thick, 1 1/4 inch strip to hold the panels in. And there's a little bit of lateral movement left and right, but this wood is so rough cut, so wet, it's only going to get skinnier from here. And then this way, if there is some big gapping, I could just stick a crowbar on one side and just push it over and tighten it up. So as it dries, the door is going to get lighter and the gaps are going to open, and then I could, oh, there's my turkey. She came over to say hi. Every time I get close to the ground, she comes over and says hi. I didn't even see her there until I saw the edit. And now this is actually the very first door that I did. And the first one I put the wood in. And then this one is when I did off camera. This is just a full door. That's going to be the entrance. And again, everything's overlapped 1 inch with a lap joint. And that also has a strip of 1 1/4 inch above and below to keep all the planks in. And this is very reminiscent how I did my basement door a few years ago. You'll notice I'm using a worm drive skill saw. These things are bananas. You don't have any stalls. You don't have to change batteries mid-cut. So that is a killer saw. Patrick gave me that. It's probably from the 80s. It's a great saw. You know, you got to watch your wrist when you turn it on. I've been using it quite a bit because it just doesn't stall. I can't stand use battery tools that stall and they have the safety brake and they stop in the middle of a cut because they think you might get hurt. And so here, just doing more of the lap joints. More of the same. I had a lot of these to do, and as I said, by the time I was done with this job, I had the system all worked out. Now I have Mike as a helper for the day, so I didn't have to screw them together. Plus, they were so heavy to carry as one piece. Me and Mike were both carrying them 2 and 3 at a time. They were just unbelievably heavy. So together, we can put them in place, put the clamp in the 1 1/4 inch strip, weld it, and just keep moving through. So it was great. I only had one helper one day. in this whole entire job. And to keep the planks close to the frame right there where I couldn't get a clamp in the middle, I put the screws with the big washer head on them. And that pulled all the wood into the frame. Because from the back, you'll notice here, to get that strip tight, I put a screw on the piece of wood and use the claw of the hammer to pull it in. And that's where I was using the claw for the hammer. Near the edge of the door, I can use clamps and pull everything up. So I got everything tight to the frame. That was really the most important thing, is that it looked tight to the frame. And there you can see Mike pulling those out after I'm done welding everything. And having those tight to the frame just makes everything look nice and sweet. They look like bank vault doors, which I really love, is that the jamb and the door themselves are in the same plane. When I did the barn across the way there, across the driveway, a couple of years ago with JD, we made the doors inset, and that was my decision. But here I said, let me just go. It was actually easier for me because I was able to just put a wooden door stop inside. Everything was right at the 3-inch thick. I didn't have to make a custom shape. Only a door guy's going to know what I just meant. Now here, these are a set of doors for the big side. I was only able to make one for this video because I ran out of material. And here I have the fixture table. You'll notice how I was able to convert the fixture table to bigger than 5 by 10. This is 5'7" wide by 10'3" high. And these doors are monsters. They are super heavy. They're still smaller than the doors that you see in this building that I'm working in. The doors me and JD made are 12 feet by 6 feet, and they were monstrous. Made with the same material, by the way. It's made with 1/4 inch 3 by 3. And there I have to flip it over to weld the other side. And you can see it is no easy task working alone, which is about 95% of this project. Patrick showed up this day, so he was able to help me carry these doors over. I was just going to drag them with a chain. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And here I'm just welding in the V-weld, the V there, the miter joint, using that Cubetron. It cuts through stuff. It turns any granules into like a little SOS pad. It's amazing. And now it's me and Patrick pulling out the frames. And I was running out of time. This video had to be posted at a certain time. And I ran out of material. So in this video, I'm just going to have this door done and the other doors done. And the other side, I'm just going to do it another time. And as far as hardware goes, this door went up. I didn't have the time to install lots of hardware, but I was able to get the doors hung, and that's really the hardest part, the most important part. And here I was very impressed. If you follow me on Patreon, I did it up close and I showed how I was able to keep this air gap at exactly 1/4 inch. And I was very impressed with myself, because a lot of times I will invert numbers and I'll read the number backwards, and when I go bring my cut piece back to where I was supposed to install it, I'm 10 inches too long or 10 inches too short. So I was very nervous at this moment in time, and I was so excited that I went on Patreon to tell everybody, look at how happy I am. And here we go. I'm welding the bullet hinges on, starting at the top. And I have 7-inch bullet hinges, which I use for the big single door, and then I use 3 on this door. So I use 2 on the one small man door to get into the building. And here I'm using 3 7-inch bullet hinges that I got on Amazon. And I've noticed Amazon sells them now in sets. So if you want to get, it sells them maybe 10 pair or 5 pair, because it seems that people like me always tend to buy a lot of them. And they're really convenient. I bought several different sizes. Years ago, the very first time I used them was on a cabinet that I made for a Lincon electric project, which happens to be in my living room right now. Made a steel cabinet with wired glass doors. Here we go. We're going to try and see if these doors work. It's very exciting. Now it's hard to see because it was dark, but up in there's a 2-inch thick strip that's welded the width of the boards. So now when I put the boards in, I just tuck it up under that piece of steel, and then I tow it into the bottom. And then once it's towed into the bottom, I'll put another piece of steel across the bottom and tack weld it in. And this way the boards are never going to come out. And what I'm probably going to do in time is I'll put some black tar paper over them, maybe a 1-inch thick foam insulation, and do another layer of wood on the other side. It'll block the light going through. I just didn't have the time to lap join these. Plus they're so long it would be difficult to lap join in the whole length. They were 10, 11 feet long. And now here you go. They're tucked up underneath that piece of steel on top. And in a day or two, I'll put some steel on the bottom to keep them from falling completely out. And I put that little jam stopper on the bottom so that the doors stop at the top and the bottom at the same time. If that ever becomes inconvenient, I could just unscrew it. Now this is the hardware, temporary hardware, just because of timing. I wanted to make sure everything worked. And there's a little trick. Put your slide lock at the jam, hit it with a hammer, and then it gives you exactly where you need to drill the hole. Patrick was pushing on the door from the other side, and so I was able to get a witness mark on the door jamb. And now this is the moment I've been waiting for. With all the welding stresses and steel tension, I'm going to cut these doors in half with an angle grinder. And I'm going to take some time off camera after everything is said and done and cleaning up those cuts. I did a little bit, but there's still a lot to do. I need to cut these doors completely in half, and believe it or not, they work pretty good. Pretty good. They actually work very good. A little bit of adjustment off camera is going to be needed, but you'll notice the slide lock holds the two doors together. The one that's vertical and the one that's horizontal keeps both doors locked as one. There I am. I'm very excited. And here you see me cutting every other one. Now that I know the first one worked well, I'm cutting every other one. And again, this is a horse barn. That's the concept for this building. I probably won't use it as a horse barn right now, but if I ever did sell the property, or if I ever wanted to rent this place out, it is prepared to be a horse barn if anybody ever wanted to take it that one step further. Plus, I was challenging myself to make these Dutch doors. I liked the concept once I thought of it, and I'm just trying to see it through. I really am happy with them. I think they really look beautiful. And I'm probably going to paint everything black. I know that's kind of blasphemy because everyone wants to see the natural wood age. Because I already did that on the other building. I'm letting the steel rust. Ah, ta-da. Here I am. Big doors. They have a little bit of a jiggle in them until I put some more weight in them and put another layer of wood and insulation in them. They jiggle a little bit. The other ones did until I also insulated them and doubled them up. And that's the main man door. Inside that door is all the light switches and everything. So that's going to be the main door to get in. I'll put some hardware, and this whole building is going to be completely sealed off. There's only going to be one keyhole in that one door that's not split in half, the one there on the right side of the screen. You're going to open that keyhole, and then everything's going to be accessible from inside. And that's the way I like it. So there's one key to get in, one door to get in. Everything else gets unlocked from the inside. So you won't see any hardware outside. The only thing you'll see is a keyhole. And I'll do that in due time. This is a fun project. Thank you, BetterHelp. And if you're having a hard time, go to BetterHelp. It's helped a few of my friends. And also, thank you all for sticking around. I'm going to add a tip at the very end that I would have shown on Patreon. So if you're inclined to join me on Patreon, these are the kind of things you'll see. Thank you very, very much. I'm working on the frames. Here's are all the parts that are cut. I'm making the next 4 doors. And I had a piece that was cupped. It's hard to tell unless I lay every piece on the table, and I don't really have the wherewithal to do that because they're almost all perfect. This one had a big bow in the middle. It was high here, and each side teeter-tottered. So the piece was going chick, 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 which would mean that when I put it in the door frame, this piece was going to stick out of the door frame. If the top was lined up and the bottom was lined up, that would belly outward. So this is my quick fix, which I probably won't show in the YouTube video. I put a slice in it and a slice in it on either side of what I felt like is the belly. And I hammered that little wedge in. I hammer those little wedges in, and it spreads it. So now, see the other side is clamped? This side was up in the air about 5 millimeters. And now it's touching the table without a clamp. So that means now I've made it straighter. And of course I'll weld this. And what I'll probably do is throw like a razor blade or something underneath there and bang it, because when I weld it, it's going to contract. So that little razor blade is going to lift me up about 2 millimeters so that this is touching, that's bellied up in the air versus bellied against the table. And I will have corrected it to some extent. Maybe not perfect, but again, it's just a barn door, which also will be cut in half because this is going to be one of the Dutch doors. But right now, I know I've corrected it at least a little bit.